Oh, yes. Now I see you, but
Yeah,
let's see.
but you cannot
Yeah,
hear me.
I think it's because of your headphone.
You cannot
Nice to
hear me,
see
no?
you, Ali. I hope you
Thank
are
you, thank you,
well
thank
today.
you.
It's Sunday. Almost we are close to the 2026.
Yes,
So
finally,
let's see what will happen in 2026. I hope it will be luck and joy and happiness. So
hopefully.
today, as previously, we already started, and it was the previous week with risk and incident management. Today, we will talk about how to understand the strategies and techniques of the risks that we are
Mhm.
already trying to control. Just let me see if you. I think you can see my screen, isn't it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, I can. Can you hear me? Yes, I can.
No, it's just not. Let me see. Let me see and share. Yes. Okay. So the content today is
Please.
about how to identify, analyze hazards, and of course how to evaluate them and the risks. The criteria, is it a really low risk or a high severe risk? So how to show prioritize the actions, and after the assessment, what shall we going to do? So how to change the working environment because of the well-being and health of the employees, and even all the site that we are working in. So of course there are different methods. However, there are standards, international standards, that we are also using on local basis, like qualitative, quantitative, and of course the assessment systems, procedures, monitoring, ways of monitoring, and reviews and training strategies. So we need to show our employees that we are not neglecting or not overseeing what is going on after a hazardous structure.
Mhm.
So these are really important things, to take the responsibility of a hazard afterwards. So here, so we need to, of course, be able to evaluate the common risk management strategies.
Hello?
So we need to
Hello?
first build them, create them, and afterwards we need to manage them and make follow-ups about them, the processes, and
Yeah.
we need to manage uh, because the strategy is not coming from somewhere else. The
Hello, hello,
strategy
hello,
is just
hello,
created, studied, worked out by
hello,
an
hello, 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 hello,
institutional
hello.
company.
Hi,
So
hi.
needs to be manageable
Hello.
afterwards and accessible. And of course, the targets need to be reached at the end. So we will not put it in the library and not use it as long as we don't need it. No, we need to use it every day, step by step, in sectoral or in the sectoral management system, so that we can manage the risks as well. That is what we need to prioritize.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, of course, we need to have a risk control strategy. So that means when we are starting a business or starting an institution or anything, we need also to build a risk control strategy. So there are, of course, some steps we need to do. The first thing is elimination. So the most effective strategy is to eliminate the hazard or risk altogether from the workplace. So we need to take action before the hazard happens. Therefore, there is, of course, consultancy or expertise that can show us how and when hazards can happen in a kind of process that we are using as a workplace. So this may involve, of course, redesigning processes, substituting hazardous materials, or automating tasks to remove the potential harm. So it is to manage hazards or manage risks before they come on board. So substitution is another kind of way that we need to take precaution. So it is, we need to be aware about hazardous materials. It can be equipment, it can be chemicals. So we, during the processes that we are doing in the business, we need to search for safer alternatives. Even in chemicals or even in machinery, we need to use the safer way for the process and producing steps. For example, in this part, it is using non-toxic chemicals instead of hazardous ones, or substituting manual lifting with mechanical lifting equipments, such as instead of employees are carrying something, we need to maybe uh, put some elevators in the form. So I would like to give an example from my own experience. I'm working voluntary in Oxfam. It is a charity, international and charity. Every Saturday, I'm going there and working there in the Oxfam store. And we are managing to get the donations downstairs, because people are donating lots of things, except we are not accepting technological donations. We are accepting lots of different kind of donations, and we need to put them downstairs, carry them downstairs, which is real difficult. And what we are doing, there is an elevator where we put all the equipment and then uh, send it downstairs. Even the opposite, we are again not carrying them. Sometimes we are carrying it, but it is really difficult. So we are putting all the equipment, whatever we have priced, in the um, elevator and then send it upstairs so that we are not carrying it. This is a kind of a strategy to avoid risks. For during carrying, we can fall down, or even or from the stairs, because the stair, it's only one step. However, it is very high in it has uh, it has a very high angle, so it is difficult to carry all this material. This is a kind of um, replacement to avoid hazards for the employees. This is somehow manage the risks or the process to move into a safer alternative during doing something in the workplace. So even here, it is an example of changing, replacing toxic materials with non-toxic materials if they have alternatives. Otherwise, it needs to be, employees need to get protective, maybe clothes or even gloves, any kind of material, or even wearing glasses to avoid this chemical hazardous toxic
Yeah.
effect.
Yes.
Engineering control. Engineering controls, these are kind of during the implementation of physical modification to equipment, or using machinery to producing something, or the work environment to reduce the exposure to hazards. So the higher we use the technology, we need also modify the technology in a safer frame for
Don't
the
hear me?
employees. Even
Not hearing
there
me?
can be maybe replacement from
Yeah.
employees to robots in a very hazardous environment. That will happen. So it's a kind of risk management and hazard management also. So here it's an example of including installing machine guards, ventilation systems, noise barriers to control workplace hazards. Ali. Yeah. Any question?
I don't know if you are able to hear me. No? No?
No, no. There is no. Unfortunately, there is no voice coming. I think it's simple. It will come up. So, administrative control. So, administrative control is the way in which the management board needs to take action. That means they need to make follow ups, implement the policies, procedures, and they need to make follow ups for trainings, for the training programs for the employees, or even if the training programs are not enough or the procedures, they need to uh, find a way and modify the way of the workplace to reduce employees to exposure to hazards or even the environment as well. This may include job rotations, training on safe work practices, and scheduling break to mitigation fatigue related risks. So there are also personal protective equipment, PPE. We will talk about it more. So PPE, the personal protective equipment, is a kind of safety goggle, gloves, helms, or respiratory protection to employees to reduce their exposure to hazards. PPE should be used as a last resort when other control measures are not feasible or sufficient. PPE needs to be every time there. I was in the summer in Japan, Ali, and we were walking in Tokyo in the street, and we saw that there were workers which were working on the roads to redo the roads, to reconstruct the roads, and all they had, they wore helms, there were some gloves and jackets. The jackets were all in bright colors so that they could be seen from a very far distance, and all the environment was very secure, surrounded with some kind of security um, borders. It was very interesting, and we watched them. So and it was really interesting. Whenever we saw a worker on the street or somewhere working, they all wore helmets. So my daughter, she said, yeah, so look, mommy, even in the airport in Tokyo, we saw that people who were just working around the planes, they wore helmets. So it is a kind of personal protective equipment. So using gloves, helmets, or respiratory protection, or even wearing some
Yeah.
bright colored
Yeah.
jackets or some kind of
Do you hear me? Do you hear
protection
me?
dresses is uh, very important to understand that these kind of people are protecting themselves during their workplace, in their workplace. So PPE should be used as a last resort when other control measures are not feasible or sufficient. They need to be used as always when people are working. So techniques of risk control. Here, there is, of course, a process, a step by step regulation. We call it hierarchy of controls. So, the hierarchy of controls provides a systematic approach to selecting and implementing control measures, prioritizing those that offer the highest level of protection. So there needs to be a step-by-step regulation. The hierarchy typically includes elimination, substitution, engineering control, administrative control, and PPA. So these are all what we are talking about. So to manage the policy, to do all the safeguarding regulations, hazard risk and management regulation, and the engineering control, and then the administrative control and the PPA finally. So there are some kind of analysis we will talk about. One of them is the job hazard analysis. So it is a kind of analysis which conduct a systematic assessment of job tasks to identify the potential hazards, and it develops control measures to mitigate risks. So it is, and the back part, yes, the steps, the regulations are implemented, but in the front part, there is also a team, an internal team, which is managing to analyze if the procedures and the steps are taken seriously and are taken under the process. So the job hazard analysis involves breaking down each job task into steps, identifying hazards associated with each step, and implementing controls to eliminate or minimize the risk. So it is also a kind of micromanagement to see in which stage hazards is taking place, is occurring, or even in which stage in the micromanagement procedure there is a kind of risk. So therefore, it is important to work in the doing a job hazard analysis step by step by dividing each issue and procedure. So there are, of course, there needs to be staff which are the audits and which make inspection. So audits and inspection needs to be made internally by a team of staff, and also needs to be done from an externally team as well, to make a report which is not against the firm company, but it is objective. It makes this analysis objective. That means it is not working on behalf of the company. So regularly conduct audits and inspections of the workplace to identify the hazards, assess compliance with the safety regulations, and verify the effectiveness of control measures. So it is a kind of verification to understand if it is done properly or not. So another thing is, of course, the safety audits help identify the gaps in safety management. They will see and understand that there are gaps during the management of the safety, and then prioritize what should be done to modify and make it better for the risk and safety management. So to correct the actions, so make positive modifications. Safety training and education. As we have talked about this in the previous week, in our previous unit, provide trainings there are really important, because they change with the change of the needs and the technological change and the change of the processes. So it is, of course, employees or even the managers need to be having comprehensive trainings before all these kind of processes start. An education to employees on hazard recognitions, how to make the workplace more safe for practices and for the proper use of measures and controls. So, effective training empowers the employees so that they can be self efficient, self esteem against sudden hazards, to take responsibilities for their safety and for their safety of their workers, employees, and teams and equipments. Therefore, they will gain knowledge, skills to avoid hazards and risks. So, every time, in every term, these trainings and education needs to be again done for the new employees, or even if it is changing, it needs to be done in seasonal term as well for all the teams. It is not only for the workers, it is also for the managers and also for all the teams that are assessing and auditing the health and safety risk management strategy. Incident investigation and analysis. So, incident means when something happens. So, incident investigation is accidents, incidents, or even the near misses to identify underlying causes and seeing what kind of factors contribute to these kind of accidents. So it is to investigate how it happened. That's the point. So the analysis of incident is collecting data, collecting the follow-ups or the recordings that are that have been taken during the incident. So it is how to identify the trends, the patterns, even the systematic, if it is a systematic issue, to make a follow-up and watch the recordings and then correct the process and modify the incident which is taking place. That is really, really important for modifying the process. Finally, in this part, we can say that by employing a combination of strategies and techniques of risk control, organizations can effectively manage risks and create safer work environment for their employees. So if it is a big organization, it needs to employ staff which are working on risk management, incident reporting, incident investigating, and of course analysis at the end. This is really important. And even they don't have this stuff, they need to subcontract these kind of consultancy companies to see how it's happening and what is going on inside their business as well. So the evolution of common risk management strategies. So it is, of course, the strategy of the structure. As we said, it is. As I gave an example of Oxfam, which is a charity, which is a non-governmental organization. It might be also a company like Apple, Microsoft, or even Amazon, in which the employees are, maybe we are hearing they have very difficult working positions and conditions, or even in textile sector in the developing countries. So it is a kind of how to evaluate the use of risk management. So every structure needs to build up its own risk management strategy, and it needs to cover each step of the process and assess the effectiveness of the common risks of the management strategies. So it needs to be prioritized, and it needs to be dependent on the structure which is working this risk management strategy. So it is characterized for that kind of structure. It can be a company, it can be an NGO, it can be a school, it can be a public body, or it can be a private, big international organization. So there are, of course, some evaluation processes. So it is identifying risks and hazards. First one is how to identify how effective it is. So there are, of course, common risk management strategies such as workplace inspection, hazard mapping, job safety analysis, and incident investigations are effective in identifying a wide range of risks and hazards in the workplace. So these strategies involve systematic approaches to identify potential hazards associated with work activities, equipment, materials, and environmental factors. It is, the thing is, of course, to do it regularly, step by step, and to when doing it regularly, then even the risk has not been observed in the first part, it can be seen in the second, in the third follow-ups. So therefore, the regular process of risk management analysis inspection is an important priority. Identifying those at risk. So we need to understand what is a risk. Maybe employees don't think that it is a risk. They think that, no, it's nothing. It's something that we are dealing during the work, but it might be a risk. And they are not aware of it, unaware. Even it can be not seen as a risk for the evaluator or the owner of the company. So it needs to be seen and shown that it is a risk under certain regulations, international regulations and criteria. And then it needs to be seen in trainings and shared and learned. So lesson learned. That's the point. So strategies such as employee engagements, consultation, and participation are effective in identifying individuals or groups at risks. So it is involving employees in the risk assessment process enables organizations to capture valuable insight and knowledge regarding workplace hazards and vulnerable populations. Regular communications and feedbacks mechanisms ensure that all employees are aware of potential risks and their impact on their health and safety. Such as it can be a company which is producing inks, or even it can be a textile company where they are coloring the cotton fibers before turning it to its textile products. However, risk can be the chemical that they are used may be allergic to some workers, but the workers wouldn't be aware about that. They wouldn't know that they have allergies against some kind of chemicals. So it needs to be analyzed before they are starting to work, and they need to learn how to avoid or how to protect themselves, or even they shouldn't work in that department. So it is the workplace, the employees would not know that, they are not aware about that this is a risk and hazard for their health and safety, but they need to train and educate about that. And to report it is it's another kind of issue. So they need to know that they should report this kind of incidents. So these are all included in the training and education part before they start working.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
So what is it finally doing
Hello?
in this business? It is increasing the
Hello, hello, hello.
well-being of employees and increasing the impact of the employees,
Hello, hello,
that company as well.
hello.
They will think that, yes,
Yes, do you hear me?
this working place is taking precautions against our well-being and our health. So it is a place where risk management strategy is managed and implemented. That is an important thing. So on the international platform, if it is stated in the product, if it is a textile product, and in the product, in the brand, it can be seen that written that this textile is produced under risk and hazardous strategy management strategies, and we are taking care about our employees under these regulations. So it would be more um, worth for the customers to buy these kind of products. That's how it shows international responses and impact as well. So it will turn, of course, into the business income as well. Of course, it is an expenditure to do these strategies and to do these follow-ups and investment of incident and evaluation. However, it will create an income as well on global scale. Uh, so evaluate likelihood and severity. What does it mean? Quantitative risk assessment methods, such as risk matrix, fault tree analysis, and event tree analysis, enable organizations to evaluate the likelihood and severity of identified risks systematically. So these are the methods. I also will show it afterwards, which show that this risk is happening regularly, and it is shown a severity, and it is a systematic risk. So these methods provide a structural framework for assessing risks based on objective criteria, facilitating the consistency and transparency of decision making regarding the risk prioritizing and control measures. So this shows us normally actually that this structure is managing risks. So how to control the standards? So the standards for industry standards are international standards. So the regulations, guidelines, and best practices enable organizations to identify appropriate risk standards relevant to specific hazards and work activities. So it is the standards ensure that control measures are aligned with industry benchmarks on international scale and regulatory requirements, reducing the likelihood of workplace accidents and ensuring legal compliance. So for this, I will share with you the, Ali, there was a fire in Hong Kong, and lots of buildings which were interconnected burned out a couple of weeks ago. So it was because of the company which was renovating the buildings had used a kind of material which was very flammable. So when the fire started, they couldn't stop the fire, and it burned out all the buildings in that area. So this is a very devastating hazard. So
Okay.
this could be manageable on the
Meltem,
risk management
excuse
strategy
me,
when
excuse
they
me. Hey,
just planned and mapped how to do this renovation. So this is really, really interesting, and it is a tragedy. Tragedy. At the end, it is a tragedy. We don't know how many people vulnerable lost their lives. So create an action plan. Effectiveness. Developing a comprehensive action plan involves identifying and prioritizing control measures to mitigate identified risk effectiveness. Strategies such as the hierarchy of controls and risks, prioritizing techniques enable organizations to develop their action plans that address high priority risk first, and considering the factors such as severity, likelihood, feasibility, and cost effectiveness. So these are critical to see and manage and to prioritize which is the high risk. Put it on the front and prioritize it. Clear action plans provide guidance on implementing control measures and assigning responsibilities to staffs, ensuring accountability and timely executions. So, evacuations, executions are really important. Prioritizing actions. So, this is an important thing. So, when a fire happens or when an explosion happens, who will and what kind of stuff on which part will work this issue out and prioritize it. So prioritizing actions based on risk levels, potential consequences, and available resources is essential to allocate resources effectively and on step by step during on behalf of the priority, and address high priority risks promptly. Utilizing risk assessment matrix, risk scoring systems, and multi-criteria decision analysis enables organizations to prioritize actions systematically, considering both qualitative and quantitative factors. Prioritizing actions ensures that limited resources are allocated to areas where they can have the greatest impact on reducing risks and enhancing safety performance. Record assessment. Maintaining accurate records regularly, properly, can help the team to see the risk assessment process and avoid hazards and make possible risk evaluations, control measures, and action plans. It's essential for accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement. Effective record keeping ensures that the risk assessment findings are documented and accessible to relevant stakeholders, facilitating communication, review, and auditability. Utilizing electronic database, document management systems, or paper-based record ensures that assessment records are organized, up to date, and readable, available for references. So here we need to maybe use technological tools in monitoring system or monitor mapping, digital mapping. We can maybe make then assessment more faster during the high risk procedures. So, in this part, when we concluded, overall common risk management strategies are effective in managing risk through the risk assessment process, from hazard identification to the implementation of control measures. So employees need to get systematic approaches, trainings, and face to the new regulations by learning it. Involving stakeholders and utilizing relevant standards and best practices, organizations can enhance their ability to identify, assess, and control risk effectively, ultimately improving workplace safety and health outcomes. So, now justifying to use risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk transfer, analysis, evolution, and of course, at the end, review the strategies. So, strategies have a time frame. A strategy is not endless, limitless. It has a time frame. It has a start and an end. Then we need to redevelop strategies for a new time period. Therefore, at the end, we need to make revision and assessment about the strategy. Have we reached the targets of the strategy? Have we done all the activity plans? Have we done all the plans, complete the performance criteria, and have we reached the performance criteria? This is what we need to justify as well. So we need to, of course, understand how in different kind of risk management strategies there are different kind of implementation and assessment processes, and how effective are these. So what do we mean with risk avoidance? So use the risk avoidance when the identified risk presents severe consequences that are unacceptable, or when the risk cannot be effectively controlled through other means. So we need to take action about that. So we need to learn and understand what is happening. Another thing is, of course, when not to use. Avoidance may not be feasible if the risk is inherent to activity or cannot be eliminated without significant impact on operation or objectives. Risk reduction. So, when to use? Employ risk reduction when the identified risk can be mitigated through control measures to reduce its likelihood or severity. When not to use risk reduction. Risk reduction may not be appropriate if the cost or effort required to implement control measures exceeds the potential benefits, or if the risk cannot be adequately controlled using available methods. That's the point. So, risk transfer. When should we transfer the risk? To transfer the risk to third parties such as insurers or contractors, when they can better manage or absorb the risk, or when contractual agreements allow for risk transfers. That's the point. When not to use a risk transfer method is risk transfer may not be suitable if the cost of transferring the risk is higher than the potential benefits, or if the third party is unwilling or unable to accept the risk. So it needs to be managed between the workforce, such as. So the one which is dealing with the risk need to transfer it, but the other part, the other group is not capable to do it, or there is no benefit to transfer it. Risk analysis. When do we need to do a risk analysis? To conduct risk analysis systematically, evaluate and identify the risks, to modify the process. And in this part, it is to assess their likelihood and severity and prioritize the control measures. So we need to make a label of the risk. If it is severe, and the priority, if it needs priority to prioritize. When not to use, avoid relying solely on risk analysis. When dealing with complex or uncertain risks that cannot be accurately quantified, or when qualitative assessments are sufficient to inform decision making. So either it is not properly accurately quantified, or it is sufficient to inform decision makers. Evaluation. When to evaluate risks to determine their significance, to prioritize them, avoid subjective evaluations that overlook or underestimate certain risks. Risk review. When to use regular review risk assessments to ensure that remain relevant. In the workplace, up-to-date evaluations reviews. Avoid neglecting risk reviews or relying solely on outdated assessments, as this may lead to ineffective risk management and increased exposure to hazards. That is another consequence. Types of risk assessment and justification. Generic risk assessment. When to use. Use generic risk assessment for common hazards. So it is a kind of draft risk assessment method that you can use for other risks as well. When not to use, avoid using generic risk assessments for high risks or complex activities that require prioritizing and specific risk hazard analysis. Specific risk assessment. Conduct specific risk assessment for unique or non-routine tasks. That is important. Not to use it. Avoid relying solely on specific risk assessment for routine tasks or hazards when it's a standard one, which is manageable. Dynamic risk assessment. When to use it, use dynamic risk assessments in dynamic or rapidly changing work environment. It can be a very fast changing work environment, like in movies, movie productions. I was in a movie the day before, and it was a very fast movie. So I thought about how they produced it. So there were lots of hazards I see. I saw during when I watched the movie. So avoid using dynamic risk assessment as a substitute for true planning and preparation, especially for high risk activities. Don't use standards. You need to do different just on the risk and risk assessment. So differences between, so when we come to the end, so of course, differences between assessment types and justification, qualitative assessments, semi-quantitative assessments we have. So it is, we have quantitative assessments. When to use, conduct quantitative assessment for detailed risk analysis, probabilistic modeling, cost benefit analysis. In qualitative assessment, we use them by employ qualitative assessments for preliminary risk screening, hazard identification, and decision making when quantitative data is limited or unnecessary. So we need, when we don't have the data, we need to make, of course, qualitative assessment as well. So when we implement effective risk assessment system, we need to make some recording protocols. These are crucial. So we need to make some protocols to recording, because we are recording also people who are working on the job. So there needs to be a consistency and standardization, and it needs to be a completeness in conducting risk assessment. So we need to, of course, training skills and responsibilities. We need to provide comprehensive training, develop necessary skills, and assign clear responsibilities for the personnel, staff, and employees, the one which are conducting the risk assessment, to ensure that there is a standard in accountability and competence. Authorization and monitoring, when to use, implement, we need to, of course, authorize the implementation of the risk assessment procedures, and then we need to make an announcement that we are doing this and we are doing monitoring. So all the employees need to be aware that we are making regular monitoring, so that they can obey and follow up all this procedure and take serious action and consider it like a serious action. So, by considering when to use different risk management strategies, type of risk assessment, and implementation of effective risk assessment system, organizations can enhance, develop, improve their ability to identify, assess, and control risks, ultimately by prioritizing them, or improving the workplace safety and health income. So, of course, at the end, Ali, so developing safe systems of work and safe operating procedures is essential for ensuring the health and safety of employees and minimizing risks in the workplace. Let's see how this happens. So, there are, of course, clear and comprehensive instructions, risk assessment and control measures, competence and trainings. We already talked about them. Supervision and monitoring, getting supervision from consultancy and expertise. Emergency procedures and regulations need to be follow up, and they need to be included in evacuation routes, emergency contact and protocols in the workplace, and for the incidents, accident, and hazardous situations. When to use the different risk strategies, we need to use risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk transfers, when they can better manage or absorb risks, all of them. So we need to do risk analysis, we need to evaluate the risk, and we need to make revisions on regular basis, up-to-date job procedures, or even implementing procedures. So in conclusion, by incorporating these characteristics, incorporating means working with stakeholders into safe systems of work and safe operating procedures, organizations can effectively manage risks, promote a culture of safety, and protect the well-being of their employees. So today, I think it is we we complete the thing is we such as, I will give you an example. Maybe you can search for it. I have listened about it today. You know, there was an earthquake in Japan in 2010. There was a big tsunami coming out. And this tsunami, the waves, water waves, hit the Fujiyakama power station. which is a nuclear power station. And three of the generators explode. And normally, when we speak about Japan, it is the most developed country on the world, isn't it? However, they couldn't control, even they couldn't stop the fire. They tried it, and lots of the staff, they stayed there for days, and lots of them died afterwards. So I would like to give you it is only a paper, or even you can read about it, and then we can discuss it in the next session. Or you can do it in your assignment also. You can read about it. So why, even they were a very developed country, they couldn't manage the risks. They built the plant next to the sea. So let's talk next session about this explosion and how they managed or how they couldn't do this risk management properly. Do you have any question, Ali? Now I'm stopping now the recording.